Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Students, today we'll be studying linear graphs, simultaneous linear equations, mathematics for class 8, chapter 1, practice now 1, exercise 1A, basic level and intermediate level. Coming over to the exercise, first we will try to solve practice now 1A. In practice now 1A, we have given the values of x and y. Initial position of x is 0, initial position of y is 2, final position of x is 4, and final position of y is 14. So if we look in the graph, the initial position of x 0, y at 2, and final position of x 4, this is x-axis 4, and final position of y is 14. So this is y-axis. So vertical change is rise and horizontal change is run. Since the line sloped upwards from left to right, so the gradient or slope is positive. This is our convention that a line slopes upward from left to right, the gradient is positive. So we know the final position on y-axis, this is y-axis, final position is on 14, minus initial position on y-axis, initial position was 2 on y-axis, divided by final position on x-axis, that is final position on x-axis 4, this is 4, and minus initial position on x-axis, that is 0. So 12 minus 2 is 14 minus 2 is 12, and 4 minus 0 is 4. 12 divided by 4 is 3. The gradient or m, value of gradient or m is 3. Moving on to the practice now. Question number 1, part B. Same position, initial position x 0, y 4. X is 0 and y 4. Final position 8 and 0. 8 on x axis and 0 on y axis. So horizontal change is run, vertical change is rise. Since the line slopes downwards from left to right, so gradient or slope is negative. So this is negative slope. In this case, if it would have been like this, it would be positive slope. Now it is negative slope. Now we know that rise divided by run is equal to gradient. So rise final position on y-axis minus initial position on y-axis divided by final position on x-axis minus initial position on x-axis. So final position on y-axis was 0 minus initial position on y-axis 4 divided by initial final position on x-axis 8 minus initial position on x-axis 0. So 0 minus 4 is minus 4 divided by 8. Answer is 1 by 2 minus 1 by 2. So gradient m is minus 1 by 2 or minus 0.5. Practice now 1C. Initial position 0 and minus 3. So 0 on x-axis, minus 3 on y-axis. This is y-axis. Final position 4 and 3. 4 on x-axis. This is x-axis. 4 on x-axis. And 3 on y-axis. So since the line slopes upwards from left to right, so gradient or the slope is positive. So this is positive slope. Rise divided by run. Rise is equal to final position on y-axis minus initial position on y-axis divided by final position on x-axis minus initial position on x-axis. So final position on y-axis was 3 minus, and initial position on y-axis was minus 3. This is minus 3. So 3 minus, then bracket start, minus 3 is 3 plus 3, and divided by 4 minus 0, initial position and final position on x-axis. So 3 plus 3 is 6, divided by 4, 6 by 4. So answer is 1.5. So gradient is 1.5. Practice now 1D. Initial position at x-axis is 2, final position and y-axis is 14. So this is 2 on x-axis, this is 2 on x-axis and 14 on y-axis, 14 on y-axis, and final position 4 and 2, 4 on x-axis and 2 on y-axis. So the line slopes downwards. So the gradient or slope is negative, and the rise divided by run is equal to gradient. So final position on y-axis minus initial position on y-axis divided by final position on x-axis minus initial position on x-axis. So 2 minus 14. 2 on y-axis, final position, minus 14 on y-axis, initial position, divided by 4 minus 2. 4 on x-axis, initial final position, and 2 on x-axis, initial position. So minus 12 divided by 2 minus 6. So gradient is, or m is, minus 6. Now question number 2a, intermediate level, exercise 1a. Initial position 1 and 1. Initial position 1 on x-axis and 1 on y-axis. Final position 3 and 3. Now 3 on x-axis and 3 on y-axis. So we know that the gradient of slope passes through the origin 0, 0, and this line intercepts y-axis at 0. So its intercept c is 0, because this line originates from the point 1, 1. Now coming to the exercise 2b, x and y, initial position 0 and minus 1, final position 4 and 3. This is horizontal change or run axis, and this is vertical change or rise axis. So rise divided by run is equal to gradient. So final position on y-axis was 3 and initial position on y-axis was minus 1, divided by final position on x-axis was 4 and initial position on x-axis was 0. So 3 minus bracket start minus 1. So that makes 3 plus 1, 4, divided by 4 is 1. So the gradient is 1 and it's positive. The gradient slope line passes through the origin 0 and minus 1. It passes through 0 at x-axis and minus 1 at y-axis, and this line intercepts y-axis at minus 1. So y-intercept c is equal to minus 1. Now moving on to the question number 2c. Initial position 0 and 8 and final position 4 and 0. So rise divided by run is equal to gradient. Final position on y-axis minus initial position on y-axis 0 minus 8, because 8 is our final position of x-axis, and so final position on x-axis minus initial position on x-axis. So final position and x-axis 4 and initial position was 0. So final position on y-axis was 0 and initial position on y-axis was 8. So 0 minus 8 divided by 4 minus 0. So that is minus 8 divided by 4 is minus 2. So gradient or m is minus 2. This line intercepts y-axis at 8. This is y-axis. And this line intercepts at point 8. So y-intercept m is equal to 8. Question number 2d. Initial position minus 2 and 3 and final position 0 and minus 3. Now we know that rise divided by run is gradient. Final position on y-axis minus initial position on y-axis divided by final position on x-axis minus initial position on x-axis. So minus 3 minus 3, because final position on y-axis minus 3 and initial position on y-axis was 3. So minus 3 is minus 6. Final position on x-axis 0 and initial position on x is minus 2. So 0 minus minus 2, that is plus 2. So minus 6 divided by 2 is minus 3. So gradient m, this line intercepts y-axis is minus 3. So this is y-axis and this line intercepts y-axis at minus 3. So slope of the line is downward, so gradient is negative, and this line intercepts y-axis at minus 3. So y-intercept c is minus 3. Now question number 2 part E. Now initial position 0 and 3 and final position is 2 and 6. Now we know that the rise divided by run, so 6 minus 3 divided by 2 minus 0. So 6 minus 3 is 3, 2 minus 0 is 2, 3 divided by 2 is 1.5, gradient is, or m is 1.5. This line intercept y-axis at 3. So this line intercept y-axis at 0.3. So y-intercept c is 3. Slope of line is upward. So the gradient is positive. Moving to question number 2, part F. Initial position or point is 0 and 3. 0 and 3, 3 on y-axis, 0 on x-axis, and final position is 2 and 0. 2 on x-axis and 0 on y-axis. So rise divided by run is gradient. So 0 minus 3, 0 minus 3 divided by 2 minus 0. So 0 minus 3 is minus 3, 2 minus 0 is 2. So minus 3 divided by 2 is minus 1.5 gradient. So and this line intercepts y-axis at 3. This line intercept y-axis at 0.3. So y-intercept c is 3. The slope of line is downward. So gradient is negative. Now we're moving toward question number 2, part G. Initial position 0 and 4 and final position 3 and 0. So rise divided by run is gradient. So 0 minus 4 on y-axis and 3 minus 0 at x-axis. So 0 minus 4 is minus 4, 3 minus 0 is 3. So minus 4 divided by 3 is minus 1.3. So gradient or m is minus 1.3. The slope of line is downward, so the gradient is negative. Its gradient is negative. And this line intercepts y-axis at 4. Now this is y-axis, this line intercepts at 4. So y-intercept c is